stories that matter to you. This is Fox 6 News at 6.
A day of protests, and now 24 hours later, we'll tell you what it looks like in Madison.
The legislature didn't have the power to do anything related to the authorization of gambling going forward.
And rolling the dice on a sports bet, how a new lawsuit is interfering before it begins. We gotta start talking about our weather first. I don't know who's saying rain, rain, go away, but it worked because it hasn't rained today.
Right, which isn't really good news. A lot of lawns could use some rain, right?
Yeah, which is wild because we have had so much rain, right, in the last couple of weeks, but we were calling for over an inch of rain today, and we got a trace in Milwaukee. How does that happen? Let me show you what's going on with the radar. We have had some showers and thunderstorms with some heavy rain in Kenosha. Otherwise, just some light rain showers here and there. What is going on? We had a stationary front that didn't stay so stationary today, and it ended up over Kenosha. So that did a couple of things. Number one, it created the lifting well down to our south, so that kept the heaviest rain down to the south. Number two, it shifted the wind off the lake, bringing in a little bit of drier air, also causing the lighter rain. It was a big bust, honestly, from a forecast standpoint, which obviously we absolutely hate, because when we give a forecast, we expect that forecast to pan out. Unfortunately, because that front pushed a little bit farther south, that is why we did not see the copious amounts of rain that we were forecasting today. But it is humid. Dew point 67, air temperature 74. We're in the 60s and 70s tonight. We are all going to drop into the 60s. See the front here? Look off to the southeast where we've got that front that's just right over the Kenosha border with Illinois there. So that's the reason, again, why the heaviest rain stayed down to the south. So slim chance for a shower or thunderstorm this evening. Fog develops overnight tonight, and I'm saving the best news for last. We have a great day for State Fair tomorrow. I'll have your State Fair forecast in a few minutes. Back over to you.
Tom, thank you. Our big story, things changed from hour to hour in Madison after the protest area was cleared by authorities yesterday.
I'm told we got activity where Bria Jones is. Bria, what's happening by you?
Ben, Kim, things have definitely escalated just within the last 5 minutes or so. I want to get you right to the action. Lots of tense moments here. As we were able to see, there was some sort of clash between police and the protesters. That's when we saw people surround the area. We saw one of the officers, at least an officer, appeared to be trying to attempt to handcuff a woman who was on the ground. I'm not sure. I can't make it if the woman was actually arrested or if she has since been released, but I no longer see the woman that was on the ground that the officers were attempting to handcuff. The situation definitely growing. As I was telling you guys, the protesters at 4 o'clock, we saw one protester. There were none at 5 o'clock, and now there are at least about 20 here, but I can't report as we're just taking a live look here. You can see there's maybe about 20 or so protesters at this point, but I would say I just counted before the live shot, there's about 40 officers here. So the officers at this point definitely outnumber the protesters, but that's not stopping the situation from getting out of control. At this point, it appears that tensions have escalated once again as we're now seeing police and the protesters clash. I'm no longer seeing that woman, so I am going to assume that she was put in the car that just left the scene. But again, this is the story that we have been following. Yesterday, we know that 22 people were arrested in all of that chaos and madness, and at least 10 people were cited. I know among that, one juvenile was arrested, and they found a firearm on the scene. And so at this point, things have been peaceful. So we're just now starting to see this kind of tension rise up. We've been here since about 12 o'clock. We had crews here this morning as well. We have not seen anything like this today. This all happening just within the last 10 minutes. Right before the live shot, that's where we saw the clash between a male officer and a female that was here in the crowd. But I can say that I remember seeing that woman yesterday, and she's actually not a part of the protest. And I'm not really sure what her role is was here today, maybe if she's changed her stance or what the conversation was. But I remember hearing that same woman yesterday get into it as an altercation was about to start with her and the protesters, that she was saying she was not in support of what was happening. And so at this point, it seems like things are kind of quieting down. The officers have now kind of taken, obviously, this stance here. We can look across the street, Eddie. We can see another 10 to 15 officers across the street, and even more here on this corner. So at every corner of the intersection, we are seeing Madison police officers. I'm not seeing any state patrol at this point, which is what we saw yesterday. And obviously later into the night, we saw a mixture of a state patrol and other agencies, other outside agencies that were moved into this area. But the tension is still high here as this community is upset and riled up about the death of Corey Ruiz. He was shot and killed right here at this intersection. Just looking behind the officers, you can see a circle of flowers. There's now a new bouquet in the middle of that circle of flowers, and that is where Corey Ruiz was shot and killed by a Madison police officer 2 weeks ago. Today, obviously, we have 2 crews here on the scene, so we are monitoring this situation. But it appears at this point in time that things are now starting to at least calm down. I'm not hearing as much yelling as I was just 5 minutes ago.
Bria, where did these protesters come from? Because as you said, you've been out there all day and there's been nobody out there. Did these people all arrive together?
How do y'all not have somebody in charge out here?
I would say maybe around 5:30. I had about 5 protesters that came up. I asked them where they were. Some of them said they were at that demonstration that was at the courthouse where people were bailing people out of jail. I believe it was some sort of organization. I want to say it was called 360 Bail or 360 Bond, but they were at the courthouse bailing people out this morning. Whether or not they were protesters, they were just fundraising and trying to get people out of jail. Their mission was to get people of color out of jail. And so some of the people from that initiative, from that demonstration, have come over here. And from there, I'm not really sure where these the next group of 15 or so people have come from. But these were some of the familiar faces. Many of them were out here yesterday. And so the woman who was at the center of the chaos, then when the live shot started, I know she was here earlier, but across the street, and she very blatantly yesterday said that she was not in support of the Corey Ruiz movement. So I'm not really sure what her role was here today in the chaos.
Bria, it looks at this point that the intersection is still open, that the lights are functioning and traffic is moving so far.
Yes, Kim, that has been their goal, and that is honestly, I can say I've been out here since 12:15, and this intersection has remained open at all times. And these officers, as you can see from our camera shot, they are on all 4 corners, and they are maintaining this intersection. They will keep it open as best as possible. And I guess time will tell if more protesters come and they're able to eventually outnumber them. And at this point, the police officers are outnumbering the number of protesters that we're seeing here.
Bria, you mentioned that there was another protest in Madison today up at the jail, as there was an organization more broadly was focused on issues related to people of color and bail, and protesters had showed up there with tents and shut down a street. And as you just mentioned, it appears maybe as that event has wrapped up, some of those people now moving back to where you are here, where that deadly police incident happened. We heard from the mayor for the first time today, Bria. And she talked about kind of some of the stresses in the decision making with whether or not to take the encampment down or not.
Yeah, that was a part of the conversation as we listened in during that press conference. She did say that she sympathized and she understands the pain of not only just the protesters, but she sympathizes with Corey Ruiz's family. And she said at some point in time that she hasn't had a chance to look back, but obviously there are lessons to be learned in how this situation has been handled. And so that is what we heard from the mayor. We also heard from the police chief as he kind of discussed what his officers have been experiencing, talking about some of the agitators, talking about maybe some of the protesters at points looking to pick fights, and how he's proud of how his men and women have been able to come into these encounters, have these experiences, these face-to-face interactions, when in some conversations, the one you're looking at right now, more calm. The one that we saw 10 minutes ago, absolutely not. That was chaotic, and it was just mayhem at some points. And so we're just kind of seeing, we're seeing an ebb and flow here of the tensions rising, and in moments where things are kind of lowering as the protesters are kind of moving in and out, and as they're also, just kind of figuring out how they want to navigate this situation. But to go back to your original question about where some of them came from, that protest that was happening at the jail near the courthouse, that seemed to be more of a planned event, and so police were actually blocking off the roads for that event. It took us, we could not even get close to the courthouse because they had blocked off maybe at least 2 or 3 blocks each way so that they could have that event, and police said they could be there all day. And so I'm not really sure that they had a permit or exactly who planned that specific event, but people from that event have now trickled over here to this situation here at Williamson and Baldwin, where Corey Ruiz was shot and killed 2 weeks ago. And the protesters kind of now, when they're saying, just me listening into them, they're saying that they are going to be walking back and forth. That's their way of, continuing to have motion and movement and be in the streets, as they're saying these are our streets. Their plan is to continue on, kind of like what we saw yesterday, where they were making the 4 corners, where they were marching around. We just haven't seen a steady flow of that yet, but every once in a while, when the light changes, they're taking the opportunity to make sure that they're going across the crosswalk.
All right, Bria, thank you. Again, we don't know if all the people that we saw crossing the street are part of the protest, but we certainly did see pairs of people making that crossing. Bria Jones reporting from Willie and Baldwin in Madison. We will continue to follow this story. It is developing moment by moment.
We got to take a quick break. We're going to head out to Bria just in a couple of minutes here. Stay with us here on Fox 6 News at 6.
And we continue to follow things as they are developing at this hour in Madison. It had been relatively quiet at that intersection of Willie and Baldwin. That has changed in the last half an hour.
It is quiet no longer. There was a scuffle a short time ago. Bria Jones live on the scene. Bria, it's been so interesting because, you showed us the scene throughout the day. You couldn't even tell officers were there. They were in unmarked police squads.
Yeah, some of them, Eddie, if we can kind of turn around, these are the unmarked squads, rather, that the officers were in. And as I was saying, every time someone has tried to walk into this intersection or attempt to block off this intersection here at Willie and Baldwin, that is when we have seen law enforcement swiftly hop out of these unmarked cars and to come to any situation that may be unfolding. But again, when we came to you at the start of the show, things have since calmed down here. It appears that people are having dialogue with officers. At this point, maybe we can cross the street here since we have a crosswalk. We're going to cross the street to maybe see what this conversation is, but we're starting to see the protesters. They're having their own personal conversations with the officers. Hopefully, maybe we can come to some sort of resolution because, again, that's what they have been asking for. They've been wanting dialogue. They've been wanting conversation. They've been wanting to hear from the mayor. They've been wanting to hear from the police chief, and today we finally heard from them after this encampment was taken down yesterday. And so we can listen in to some of this conversation. This officer here is saying that they can sit down and have coffee, that he's happy to have a conversation. And so this is kind of where we are right now. Let's listen into this.
Totally okay.
But the problem is the system. So what is a coffee with you as an okay coffee? Who's gonna do?
Well, I'm just saying, but it starts out with conversation and relationship building, right? I'm just saying. So I'm saying I've been a neighborhood officer for a number of years, and I can tell you that having a neighborhood officer in a neighborhood and having conversations with people, it actually does change and make a difference. It may not be this big,
or you know the name
change.
of the person you're arresting.
Well, part of it, right? That's part of it sometimes.
Because if there's hyper surveillance of us, then you're going to catch us for things that we wouldn't normally get caught of. So
that's not what we're talking about. Neighborhood officer. You could go to the neighborhood I worked in, and people would know me, and they'd say good things, right? Because there's ability. See, you got it. There's there's the ability to make relationships.
So again, we were just listening to that conversation. This is a Madison police officer having a conversation with one of some of the protesters that are here as they were talking about community policing. And really, that's kind of the conversation that I have been listening to and hearing people in the community say that they want. It appears at this point in time, again, I am not from the city of Madison, and so I don't know the deep roots and the history of this situation, but there is hurt and healing needs to happen in this community, especially after the shooting death of Corey Ruiz. And so at this point, these protesters, they want justice for Corey Ruiz. They say they want accountability. They say that they want the officers involved in the situation to be arrested. But as we all know, at this point in time, we won't know of any charging or any charging decision or the potential of any arrest until the Department of Justice continues their investigation and turn those findings over to the Dane County District Attorney's Office. And so that is how we get to this situation today, where the tensions are still boiling over, as today marks 2 weeks to the day since Ruiz was shot and killed here at this intersection. And the conversation is continuing. Hopefully they can have some peaceful conversations, but at moments and times, a lot of people, their anger is just boiling over. And so we're seeing the tensions rise, and the conversations, the temperature of those conversations are only rising, getting hotter and hotter.
And Brea, it was so interesting listening to that dialogue between the officer and one of the people, the demonstrators there, and you hear that this is more than a response to this latest incident, this shooting, that this is, they're talking about history, they're talking about a culture and a dysfunction between the police and the community.
Yeah, Kim, and that gentleman over there that has the bullhorn, a lot of these people, I think that, when we talk about maybe people who should not be a part maybe of this movement, of this fight for justice, or even those that were part of the encampment, we know what 70 people were who left the encampment and were given housing for a week by the city of Madison. We learned that during today's press conference. The gentleman over there, he's talking about his brother being shot and killed by police. And so a lot of people are bringing their own pain to the situation, which is then really just spilling over. He's now in the street placing a pig in the center of this spot that's marking off where Corey Ruiz was shot and killed. And so we have a lot of independent pain really coming together, and there just really being a lot of hurt spilling out, which is turning into all of this anguish and anger that we're seeing seeing here on our screens right now.
Madison police also wanted to make it clear again to the public that the police say that they are not heading this investigation, that it is the Department of Justice, and that they have to wait for that information to be released before any details about what happened, the officers involved, can be made public.
Yeah, Kim, that is what we are hearing from the Madison Police Department. Again, they are not leading this investigation. The Department of Justice is leading this investigation. And as we have been saying, when Attorney General Josh Call visited Wauwatosa just last week at the New Milwaukee Crime Lab, I asked him if there was a timeline for this investigation and when we could potentially know anything about a charging decision. And he said that his agency wanted to do their due diligence with this investigation and that it would take some time. And so it's really unclear. How long it will take for the DOJ to turn their findings over to the Dane County District Attorney's Office. And then once we get that decision, that's what we will all have to brace for then, because how will the public react to whatever decision is made?
We've been through this before, several weeks. It could take months. And look at all the cell phones as everybody's carrying that.
And I want to talk about that, Brea, when we come back, because so many people are on the scene and they are broadcasting. And so there's so many different narratives that are out there. The police department last night had to put out a video wanting to clarify an interaction between a demonstrator and the officers.
Really could change by the minute. We're back in a couple of minutes here on Fox 6 News at 6.
You're watching Fox 6 News with Ben Handelman and Kim Murphy.
We're following developments in Madison after demonstrators returned to an intersection, the scene of a deadly police shooting.
Yeah, we do believe that police detained or possibly arrested someone during this. There have been a lot of arrests yesterday, especially. Let's check in with security expert Brian Duro on the de-escalation tactics. He's joining us live. Brian, we're just seeing this live kind of unfold again. It shows the challenges for law enforcement, I believe, because during the 4 and 5 o'clock news, there was no one at this intersection, and then it just shows how quickly it seems it can spark.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, as I assess it, I look at progress being made. You know, when we talked about this yesterday, the street was basically closed. They were the protesters, the agitators, everyone involved. They were not letting the flow of traffic. They were impeding it, stepping in front of it, all that stuff. Now you're seeing certainly the demonstration occurring, but it's on the street corners. Traffic is flowing. You can see the traffic control signals. Again, things are moving, and you had overwhelming police presence there as well. So not to say things can't continue to unfold. As we know, these things are very quickly. They evolve, and a lot of times they're driven by social media and all the different, you know, the live streaming of this information, which at turns gets other folks to come in and join in. So we will see. But right now, as I'm looking at the camera, everyone is recording. But again, the traffic is moving, and that's the most important thing here.
Brian, again, we see officers on scene, but they're not in tactical formation. They are not wearing tactical gear, and that is a deliberate decision.
It is, because when you know the way that law enforcement presents itself, it goes a long way. They're in their regular uniforms. They're in their regular uniforms that the neighborhood, the folks would see them, interact with them. When you turn to that riot gear, the helmets, the shields, the batons, that's a higher level of presence on the force option continuum, and sometimes that draws attention. It gets people more upset, agitated, and you can see the Madison Police Department in their strategy is trying to downplay this. You know, certainly let the memorial continue in a peaceful way, but certainly they are not going to go to that level. And yesterday we saw rocks, objects being thrown. I'm not seeing any of that. Doesn't look like it. Again, not to say it can't change, but certainly it's being monitored.
Yeah, it appears it's deliberate what the officers are wearing, but how about the officers that are actually on scene? We just heard a conversation. Bria put her microphone right up to the officer, and we could hear this conversation happening with someone on the street and the police officer, and that officer was saying, hey, I worked in one of the neighborhoods. I'm one of those community officers. Do the police departments go so far as deciding who's actually going to be down there and maybe picking, people who've got that kind of background?
Ben, that's an excellent point. And yes, I certainly, being a former law enforcement officer, when we were very involved in community-oriented policing, neighborhood-oriented policing, if you have a relationship with those stakeholders, you're going to want those officers down there engaging them, because there is a level of trust. Whether they cross paths in a very positive manner, a lot of people hold on to that thought and certainly see that officer in a different light. So yes, it is very strategic, to put your neighborhood officers, if that's what the Madison Police Department is doing, which it looks like that based on that exchange of that conversation that was taking place. You want that because they're going to know this officer in a different light.
Talk about the conversations that are happening now with those officers before they're even, report for their shifts, because this has got to be a mental health strain on them as well.
It certainly is. You think about, the officer that was on the corner. Everyone has a phone. They're looking for that gotcha moment. It's being streamed live. Who knows what the audience is and what they're saying. And, I commend the officer because I did the same thing. Let's have a discussion. Let's talk about it. Let's make this peaceful. Let's carry on our way. This is a busy area. We got all kinds of, school is starting again. The college students are coming back. Nobody wants this to continue on, but let's get to the bottom of it. And that dialogue is good, as opposed to just sometimes not saying anything, standing there. So engaging them, having that conversation. Again, sometimes it works to your advantage, sometimes it doesn't.
Brian, we are going to now switch to our digital platform, Fox Local. Wondering if we could keep you on the line. Ted Perry is going to join us next at 6:30 and continue this dialogue. But for right now, we can see that there are more people than when we started this afternoon.
Yeah, Brian, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep,
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay, stay with us.
We'll keep him on the line. Download your Fox Local app right now because as we've seen, this thing really changes by the second here. So we're going to stay on it. Live feeds coming from Madison tonight.
And today we did hear from the police chief and from the mayor saying that they have tried to keep this peaceful. They have tried to give the community time to mourn and to process, but it is time for the city of Madison to move forward, and that this now is with the Department of Justice. And when that investigation is complete, then information will be released.
All right, we got to get you to programming, but what you see on your Fox Local app, fox6now.com, we're streaming live there as well. So hang tight there, and our coverage continues on our social media platform.